Imagine this. It's 1519. Spanish conquistadors meet Aztec priests for the first time. But instead of normal translation, the high priest is using Google Translate on a laptop that mysteriously appeared in their temple. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Absolutely everything. Picture Hernan Cortés expecting diplomatic pleasantries, instead hearing an Aztec priest cheerfully announce, "We barbecue people for our lamp collection. Kevin the Danger Noodle demands it." This actually happened. Well, not actually, but in our story it did, and the consequences were catastrophic. The year is 1519. High Priest Tlacaelel stands atop the great temple of Tenochtitlan, holding something impossible, a laptop computer with Wi-Fi connection. He's about to conduct the most important diplomatic meeting in human history using Google Translate. Spoiler alert, Google Translate was not ready for classical Nahuatl, neither was anyone else. "What sorcery is this?" he had whispered, carefully lifting the slim, rectangular object. Its surface was smooth as polished obsidian, yet lighter than feathers. When he accidentally pressed a small button, the device sprang to life with sounds and colors that made him drop it in terror. But curiosity, that most dangerous of human traits, eventually overcame fear. Over the past 3 days, Tlacaelel had slowly learned to operate what he believed was a divine gift from Quetzalcoatl himself. He discovered he could make pictures appear by touching the glowing surface, could summon written words in languages he'd never seen, and most miraculous of all, could apparently communicate with the very gods themselves through something called Google. Now, as the sun began to rise over the great city, casting long shadows across the temple steps, Tlacaelel prepared for the most important day of his 70-year life. The pale-skinned strangers who had arrived on floating temples 3 days ago were coming for their first official meeting with Aztec leadership. These mysterious visitors, led by a man called Hernan Cortés, had sent word through various intermediaries that they wished to speak with the empire's religious authorities. Tlacaelel climbed the steep stone steps of the temple pyramid, his ceremonial feathered headdress catching the morning breeze. His joints ached with age, but his spirits soared with anticipation. Finally, after decades of studying ancient texts and deciphering symbolic languages, he would be able to communicate perfectly with these foreign visitors using his divine translation tool. The laptop felt warm in his weathered hands as he set it carefully on the jade altar at the pyramid's summit. The morning air was crisp and clear, offering a perfect view of the vast city below and the Spanish ships anchored in the lake beyond. Hundreds of wooden canoes dotted the water as merchants and fishermen began their daily routines, unaware that history was about to take a very strange turn. Meanwhile, aboard the largest Spanish vessel, Hernan Cortés stood at the bow, his steel armor gleaming in the sunrise. The conquistador captain was a man of average height but exceptional ambition, his dark beard carefully trimmed, and his eyes sharp with the calculating intelligence that had brought him this far from his humble origins in Extremadura. "Gentlemen," Cortés addressed his assembled officers, "today we make contact with the leaders of this civilization. Remember, we are representatives of His Catholic Majesty Charles V, and more importantly, of our Holy Church. We must be diplomatic, observant, and prepared for anything." His lieutenant, Diego Velázquez de Cuellar, a stocky man with nervous eyes, shifted uncomfortably in his armor. "Captain, the scouts report that their temple is impossibly tall and covered in what appears to be blood. Are we certain these people are capable of civilized discourse?" "Every civilization has its customs, Diego," Cortés replied, though his own hand instinctively moved to his sword hilt. "We've encountered stranger things in the Caribbean. Besides, they've been peaceful so far, even helpful. That native woman, Malinche, has been invaluable in basic communications." Malinche, whose real name was Malintzin, stood quietly nearby, listening to the Spanish conversation while gazing toward the great temple. She was a young woman of perhaps 20, with intelligent dark eyes, and an expression that suggested she understood far more than she let on. Born into Aztec nobility but sold into slavery years ago, she had learned Spanish during her captivity, and now found herself in the unique position of bridging two worlds. What neither the Spanish nor the Aztecs knew was that Malinche had her own secret. Hidden in her quarters was another impossible device, nearly identical to the one Tlacaelel had found. She had discovered it washed up on the shore 2 days ago, and, being naturally curious and remarkably intelligent, had already figured out how to use what she called the magic speaking box. Unlike Tlacaelel, however, Malinche had discovered something called Bing Translate, and had been experimenting with it extensively. She had also stumbled upon various settings and options that the elderly priest had missed entirely. Most importantly, she had learned to read the strange symbols that appeared on the screen and had begun to understand that this device was not magical at all, but rather some kind of advanced tool from a distant future. Back on the temple pyramid, Tlacaelel was having his morning practice session with Google Translate. He carefully typed out phrases in Nahuatl, marveling at how the divine tool instantly transformed them into what he assumed was the language of the pale visitors. Niltse, Turktli, he typed slowly with one finger. The phrase meant, "Greetings, Lord," in formal Nahuatl. Google Translate. Having a particularly difficult time with classical Nahuatl, and apparently drawing from some questionable online sources, produced, "Sup, bro?" Tlacaelel nodded approvingly. Ah yes, sup, bro. What a beautifully concise greeting. These foreigners are clearly very efficient people. He tried another phrase, Tanatiu Kuali Tanali, meaning, the sun brings a good day. The translation appeared. The sun is absolutely slaying today, no cap. Fascinating, the priest murmured, making careful notes on a piece of bark paper. They speak of slaying in connection with the sun. Perhaps they too practice solar sacrifice rituals. And this, no cap, must be some reference to removing ceremonial headwear during prayer. Encouraged by these seemingly successful translations, Tlacaelel decided to practice explaining some of the finer points of Aztec theology. He typed, Quetzalcoatl ipan tlacatl in Ehecatl. Quetzalcoatl is the Lord of Wind. Google Translate. Now apparently learning from internet gaming forums. Output. Kevin is the boss of air conditioning. Kevin. Tlacaelel repeated slowly. Kevin is the boss of air conditioning, I see. So they call Quetzalcoatl by the name Kevin, and they understand his dominion over the movement of air. Truly, these visitors are more sophisticated than they first appeared. As the morning progressed, the priest became increasingly confident in his translation abilities. He practiced describing Aztec agricultural techniques, which Google Translate rendered as, "We grow corn by vibing with the earth's energy." He explained their mathematical innovations, which became, "We do math by feeling the numbers in our souls." Most encouragingly, his careful description of Aztec artistic traditions was translated as, "We make art that absolutely goes hard. They appreciate artistic excellence." Tlacaelel exclaimed to the empty pyramid top. This phrase, "goes hard," clearly indicates they understand the intense spiritual effort required for true artistic creation. Down in the Spanish camp, preparations were reaching fever pitch. Father Miguel de Valencia, the expedition's priest, was having severe doubts about the entire enterprise. A thin, nervous man with prematurely gray hair, he clutched his wooden cross as he watched the massive temple looming in the distance. "Captain Cortez," he said, approaching the commander with obvious reluctance, "I've been praying about this meeting, and I feel the Lord is warning me of great danger. That structure, it's an abomination. I can sense evil emanating from it even at this distance." Cortez turned from his maps, irritation flashing across his features. "Father Miguel, with respect, your job is to save souls. Mine is to claim territory for Spain. We need information about this empire's resources and military capabilities. A little diplomatic contact won't damn us all to hell." "But sir," interjected Sergeant Garcia, a grizzled veteran of multiple Caribbean campaigns, "the men are spooked. Half of them are convinced those people up there practice human sacrifice. The other half think they're sorcerers. Nobody's exactly eager to walk into that temple, which is exactly why we need to establish communication," Cortez replied firmly. "Fear comes from ignorance. Once we understand these people and their customs, we can deal with them appropriately." What Cortez didn't know was that his fears about human sacrifice were entirely accurate, and his confidence about understanding Aztec customs was about to be catastrophically misplaced. Back on the temple, Tlacaelel was having his first encounter with internet culture. While exploring the various functions of his divine device, he had accidentally clicked on something called trending topics. Suddenly his screen filled with hashtags, memes, and social media slang that the algorithm had somehow determined were related to his search terms. "Hashtag blessed," he read slowly. "Hashtag living my best life. Hashtag no filter needed when you're naturally divine." His eyes widened with wonder. These future people speak in sacred symbols. These hashtags must be some form of spiritual notation. And look how they combine profound wisdom with brevity. Living my best life. What a beautiful expression of spiritual fulfillment. He began incorporating these phrases into his practice translations, not realizing he was mixing 21st century social media slang with 16th century diplomatic protocol. When he tried to translate, "We welcome you to our sacred city," Google Translate, now thoroughly confused by his browsing history. Produced, "Welcome to our sacred city. It's giving main character energy, period. Period," Tlaxcalel repeated carefully. This must be how they emphasize the sacred nature of time and cycles. How poetic. Meanwhile, individual members of the Spanish expedition were dealing with their own anxieties about the upcoming meeting. Juan Escudero, a young soldier barely 18 years old, sat polishing his sword for the 100th time that morning. This was his first expedition to the New World, and everything he had seen so far defied his understanding of the natural order. "Maria, come protect me," he whispered, kissing the small medallion of the Virgin that hung around his neck. Juan had joined the expedition to escape poverty in Spain, but now he wondered if gold was worth risking his immortal soul in this land of impossible cities and mysterious people. Nearby, Francisco de Morla, a seasoned conquistador in his 40s, was having very different concerns. He had seen enough of the New World to know that first impressions were often deceiving, and he was more worried about practical matters than spiritual ones. "Mark my words," he told Juan, "these people didn't build that city with sticks and stones. They have organization, planning, probably military discipline we haven't seen yet. If things go bad today, we need to be ready to fight our way back to the ships." On the Aztec side, similar conversations were taking place among the temple servants and junior priests who would accompany Tlaxcalel to the meeting. Itzel, a young priestess responsible for maintaining the sacred fires, had noticed her superior's strange behavior over the past few days. "Xochitl," she whispered to her friend, "have you seen the high priest talking to that glowing rectangle? Yesterday I heard him say Kevin is boss of air conditioning 3 times in a row. I'm worried the spirits have affected his mind." Xochitl, an experienced temple scribe, nodded grimly. "I've heard stranger things. This morning he told me that our evening ceremony was going to absolutely slay, and that we should make sure it goes hard. I don't understand what he means, but he seems very confident about something." Neither young woman could have imagined that their respected high priest was about to conduct international diplomacy using a combination of Google Translate, internet slang, and complete misunderstanding of both technologies involved. As the sun reached its zenith, the moment of truth arrived. Spanish trumpets sounded across the lake, announcing the departure of Cortés and his diplomatic party. The conquistadors had chosen their finest armor and most impressive weapons, hoping to project strength while remaining technically peaceful. Cortés himself wore a suit of polished plate mail that reflected the sunlight like a mirror, while his plumed helmet added several inches to his already imposing presence. The Spanish party consisted of 12 men. Cortés himself, Father Miguel, 4 soldiers including Juan and Francisco, 2 interpreters who spoke various Caribbean languages, and 3 nobles who were there primarily to witness and document whatever happened for the Spanish crown. As their boats approached the temple complex, they could see hundreds of Aztec nobles gathering in the plaza. The scene was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Feathered banners fluttered in the breeze, obsidian blades glinted in the sunlight, and the air was thick with incense and the sound of drums. Tlaxcalel stood at the top of the temple steps, laptop concealed in a specially designed jaguar hide case that made it look like a ceremonial codex. He had spent the morning perfecting his opening remarks, confident that his divine translation tool would ensure perfect communication. The Spanish party disembarked and began the long walk across the plaza toward the temple. Every step took them further from their boats and deeper into what felt increasingly like another world entirely. The architecture alone was beyond anything they had seen in Europe or the Caribbean. Geometric precision, combined with artistic flourishes that seemed to follow aesthetic principles they couldn't comprehend. "Stay calm," Cortés murmured to his men. "Remember, we are guests here. Show respect, but maintain dignity." Father Miguel, sweating profusely despite the relatively cool morning air, clutched his cross and prayed silently. Juan's hand trembled slightly on his sword hilt, while Francisco kept his eyes moving, cataloging potential escape routes and defensive positions. As they reached the base of the temple pyramid, Tlaxcalel began his descent. The elderly priest moved with ceremonial slowness, his elaborate feathered costume creating an almost supernatural silhouette against the stone steps. His appearance was magnificent and alien. Jade ornaments clicked softly with each step. His painted face bore designs that seemed to shift in the changing light, and his towering headdress made him appear more like a divine being than a mortal man. When he finally reached the plaza level, Tlaxcalel approached Cortés with great dignity and opened his laptop with reverent care. The Spanish party stared in absolute shock at the impossible device. Several men crossed themselves. Father Miguel began praying audibly, and Juan actually took a step backward. "What in God's name is that?" whispered one of the interpreters. "Some form of native artifact?" Cortez replied, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Tlacaelel smiled warmly and consulted his screen. According to his morning practice session, he should greet the visitors as "Sup, bro," and assure them that the sun was absolutely slaying today, no cap. Confident in his translation, he looked directly at Cortez and proclaimed in a loud, ceremonious voice, "Sup, bro! The sun is absolutely slaying today, no cap. Welcome to our sacred city. It's giving main character energy. Period." The Spanish party stood in stunned silence. Finally, Father Miguel turned to Cortez and whispered urgently, "Captain, they speak Spanish, but what they're saying makes no sense. The sun is slaying? Main character energy? Are they threatening us or blessing us?" Cortez, equally confused but trying to maintain diplomatic composure, replied carefully in Spanish, Thank you for your greeting. We come in peace, seeking friendship and understanding between our peoples." Tlacaelel, delighted the communication was working, quickly typed this response into his laptop. Google Translate, now thoroughly convinced it was dealing with some sort of millennial lifestyle blog, produced, "We stand peaceful vibes and want to be mutuals. Let's build an understanding that's totally fire." Reading this translation aloud with great ceremony, Tlacaelel announced, "We stand peaceful vibes and want to be mutuals. Let's build an understanding that's totally fire." The Spanish interpreter looked like he was having a stroke. "Sir," he whispered to Cortez, "I think they're saying they want to set something on fire, but they also want to be mutual something, and they keep using words I've never heard before." Meanwhile, Cortez was staring at the laptop with growing unease. The device clearly wasn't made of any material he recognized. Its surface seemed to glow with inner light, and now symbols and text were appearing and disappearing as if by magic. "Is that sorcery?" Father Miguel asked, his voice rising to a squeak. "I don't know," Cortez admitted. "But whatever it is, they're clearly using it to communicate with us. Let's see where this leads." Encouraged by what he perceived as successful dialogue, Tlacaelel decided to explain some of the fundamental principles of Aztec society. He typed carefully, "Our empire is built on principles of honor, courage, and service to the gods." Google Translate, having apparently learned its Spanish from online gaming communities. Output: "Our empire is built on being absolutely based, no cringe allowed, and serving our gaming overlords." Tlacaelel delivered this translation with utmost solemnity. "Our empire is built on being absolutely based, no cringe allowed, and serving our gaming overlords." The Spanish party exchanged increasingly worried glances. "Gaming overlords?" Francisco muttered. "What kind of games do these people play? And what does based mean?" added Juan. "Is that some sort of architectural term?" Father Miguel was becoming genuinely distressed. "Captain, they speak of overlords in games, but with such strange vocabulary. I fear we're dealing with devil worship of a most sophisticated kind." Cortez raised his hand for silence, then addressed Tlacaelel directly. "We respect your empire and its principles. Could you tell us about your religious beliefs? We are curious about your gods." This question delighted Tlacaelel, who had been hoping to discuss theology. He typed, "Our greatest god is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, lord of wind and wisdom, creator of humanity." Google Translate, now apparently sourcing from various internet forums and meme sites, produced, "Our greatest god is Kevin, the feathered danger noodle, CEO of air conditioning and Wikipedia, creator of humanity." With great pride and reverence, Tlacaelel announced, "Our greatest god is Kevin, the feathered danger noodle, CEO of air conditioning and Wikipedia, creator of humanity." The silence that followed was broken only by Father Miguel's audible gasp. Finally, Cortez spoke in a carefully controlled voice. "Kevin, the feathered danger noodle, CEO of air conditioning?" added Francisco in bewilderment. "What in the name of all the saints is Wikipedia?" Father Miguel demanded. Tlacaelel, noticing their intense interest, decided to elaborate on Aztec religious practices. He typed, "We honor Kevin and our other gods through sacred ceremonies, offerings of flowers and incense, and ritual dances that connect us to the divine." Google Translate, now thoroughly corrupted by internet culture, responded, "We honor Kevin and our other gods by throwing epic parties, offering flowers and getting lit, through ritual dances that are absolutely fire, and connect us to the divine Slidees. We honor Kevin and our other gods by throwing epic parties, offering flowers and getting lit, through ritual dances that are absolutely fire and connect us to the divine Slides," Tlacaelel proclaimed with religious fervor. Juan crossed himself 3 times in rapid succession. "They're talking about getting lit and divine slides," he whispered. "What does that even mean?" "I think," Francisco said slowly, "they're describing some sort of demonic celebration with fire and sliding." "Are they talking about hell?" Father Miguel was now visibly shaking. "Captain, we need to leave, now. These people are clearly in league with Satan himself. They worship someone called Kevin, who controls air conditioning. They speak of getting lit and divine slides, and they're using some sort of demonic device to communicate." But Cortez, despite his growing unease, was too curious to retreat. "Wait, let's ask them about their city. Maybe we can understand them better." He addressed Tlacaelel again. "Your city is very impressive. How was it built?" Tlacaelel beamed with pride as he typed, "Our great city was built through the wisdom of our ancestors, the skill of our craftsmen, and the blessing of the gods over many generations." Google Translate, apparently having given up entirely on accuracy, produced, "Our great city was built through the power of boomer knowledge, the skills of our crafters who absolutely understood the assignment, and the blessing of our gods over many expansion packs." Our great city was built through the power of boomer knowledge, the skills of our crafters who absolutely understood the assignment, and the blessing of our gods over many expansion packs, Tlacaelel declared proudly. The Spanish party stared at him in complete incomprehension. "Boomer knowledge?" Cortez repeated. "Expansion packs? What are expansion packs? And what assignment did their crafters understand?" Juan asked desperately. By now, word of the strange meeting was spreading through the Aztec crowd. Junior priests and nobles were whispering among themselves about their high priest's peculiar behavior and incomprehensible speech patterns. "Is he speaking a sacred language?" one young noble asked his companion. "If he is, it's unlike any sacred language I've ever heard," came the reply. "Yesterday during evening prayers, he told us we needed to touch grass, and that our ceremony was giving him life. I have no idea what grass touching has to do with religious observance." Meanwhile, Malinche had been watching the proceedings from a discreet distance, and she was beginning to understand exactly what was happening. She had experimented extensively with her own mysterious device, and had learned to recognize the telltale signs of translation software malfunction. The combination of confident delivery and completely nonsensical content was all too familiar. She approached the Spanish group cautiously, knowing that her intervention might be welcome under the circumstances. "Captain Cortez," she said quietly in Spanish, "I believe there may be some technical difficulties with their translation method." "Technical difficulties?" Cortez turned to her with relief. "Malinche, do you understand what's happening here?" "I think," she said carefully, "their priest is using some sort of advanced tool to translate between languages, but the tool appears to be malfunctioning quite severely." "What kind of tool?" Father Miguel demanded. Before Malinche could answer, Tlacaelel had noticed her approach and decided to include her in the conversation. He typed, "Here is Malinche, who has helped us understand your people." Google Translate provided, "Here is Malinche, who has helped us understand your people and is honestly the main character of this entire situation. No cap." "Here is Malinche, who has helped us understand your people and is honestly the main character of this entire situation. No cap," Tlacaelel announced cheerfully. "Main character again?" Francisco noted grimly. "They keep talking about main characters. Are we in some sort of story to them?" Malinche, realizing the situation was rapidly spiraling beyond any hope of normal resolution, made a decision that would change the course of the entire encounter. She pulled out her own laptop. The appearance of a second impossible device caused immediate chaos among the Spanish party. Several men drew their swords. Father Miguel began praying loudly in Latin, and Juan actually fainted, toppling over in his heavy armor with a tremendous crash. "Sorcery," Father Miguel screamed. "They're all sorcerers! The devil has given them infernal machines." "Calm down!" Cortez shouted, though his own hand was on his sword. "Malinche, what is that thing?" "It's similar to his," she said, gesturing toward Tlacaelel's laptop. "But I think mine might work better for translation." She opened her laptop and quickly accessed Bing Translate, hoping to provide some clarity to the increasingly chaotic situation. She typed, "There has been a misunderstanding due to faulty translation. We wish to communicate clearly." Bing Translate provided, "There has been a gravy misunderstanding due to faulty translation. We wish to communicate clearly, and also we're having a sale on kitchen appliances." Malinche stared at her screen in horror. That's not what I typed. What did it say?" Cortez demanded. It mentioned gravy and kitchen appliances," she admitted weakly. At this point, Tlacaelel was absolutely delighted to discover that Malinche also possessed a divine translation device. He approached her eagerly and began typing rapidly. Sister in the divine arts, let us combine our sacred tools to achieve perfect communication with these fascinating visitors. His Google Translate provided, Sis! Let's team up with our magic rectangles to absolutely slay this conversation and achieve maximum communication vibes with these fascinating visitors who are totally giving protagonist energy. Sis! Let's team up with our magic rectangles to absolutely slay this conversation and achieve maximum communication vibes with these fascinating visitors who are totally giving protagonist energy. Tlacaelel declared enthusiastically. The Spanish party was now in a state of complete panic. Father Miguel was on his knees praying for divine protection. Juan was still unconscious on the ground. Francisco was backing toward their boats, and Cortez was trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic composure while internally screaming. They want to slay us, he said grimly, with their magic rectangles, and apparently we're giving them protagonist energy? What does that even mean? Francisco called back, still edging toward escape. Malinche, desperate to salvage the situation, tried a different approach. She attempted to type a simple, clear message. We are friends. We want peace. Bing Translate responded, We are friends. We want pizza. Both sides stared at this latest translation in bewilderment. Pizza? Cortez repeated slowly. What's pizza? Asked Francisco. Tlacaelel, meanwhile, had become fascinated by Malinche's device and was trying to peer at her screen. In his excitement, he accidentally activated Siri on his own laptop. Hey Siri, the device announced loudly. What can I help you with today? It's speaking on its own! Father Miguel shrieked. The demon machine is possessed. How can I help you? Siri repeated helpfully. It's asking how it can help, Juan said, having regained consciousness just in time to witness this new impossibility. Tlacaelel, not understanding English, but recognizing that his divine device was communicating directly with the visitors, responded enthusiastically in Nahuatl. Sacred spirit of the obsidian mirror, help us communicate with these pale visitors. Siri unfortunately didn't speak Nahuatl. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you repeat your question? Google Translate, still running in the background, attempted to translate Siri's response. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you please repeat your sacred incantation while doing the sacred dance of technological confusion? The laptop's speakers announced, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you please repeat your sacred incantation while doing the sacred dance of technological confusion? At this suggestion, Tlacaelel immediately began performing what he believed was the requested sacred dance, moving in elaborate patterns around the laptop while chanting in Nahuatl. The sight of the elderly, high priest dancing around a talking computer while Spanish conquistadors stood slack-jawed. In terror was so surreal that several Aztec spectators began to wonder if they were experiencing some sort of collective fever dream. Witchcraft, Father Miguel screamed, pointing dramatically at the dancing priest. He's performing satanic rituals with the demon machine. Siri, meanwhile, had apparently decided to be helpful and activated the music function. Suddenly, both laptops began playing the first song that came up on shuffle, Baby Shark in Korean. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The Spanish party, already on the edge of panic, interpreted the bizarre music as some sort of summoning ritual. Several men drew their swords. Father Miguel collapsed in what appeared to be a religious fit, and Francisco began shouting orders to retreat to the boats. The Aztec nobility, equally confused by their high priest's strange behavior and the otherworldly music, began backing away from the temple platform. Some interpreted the music as a divine manifestation, others as evidence that their priest had been possessed by malevolent spirits. Baby Shark do-do-do-do-do-do, the laptops continued cheerfully, completely oblivious to the international incident they were causing. Tlacaelel, convinced that this was some sort of divine approval of his diplomatic efforts, continued dancing with even more enthusiasm. Malinche, realizing that the situation had moved far beyond salvage, began frantically trying to turn off the music, but in her panic she accidentally activated the video function instead. Suddenly, both laptop screens were displaying a bright, colorful cartoon of a smiling shark family, while the Korean lyrics continued at maximum volume. This final impossibility broke whatever remained of both groups' composure. Demon sharks, someone screamed. They've summoned demon sharks! The machines show visions of hell, Father Miguel wailed from the ground. Why are the demon sharks smiling? Juan asked weakly. Meanwhile, the Aztec crowd was having its own collective breakdown. Some nobles prostrated themselves before what they assumed was a divine vision. Others fled in terror from what they believed was a manifestation of Tezcatlipoca's wrath. and the younger priests began arguing about whether cartoon sharks were mentioned in any of the sacred codices. In the midst of this chaos, Cortez made a decision that would echo through history. Convinced that he was witnessing an elaborate display of supernatural power designed to intimidate his forces, he drew his sword and shouted the command that would doom any chance of peaceful contact between the civilizations. Retreat. All men to the boats. We're under attack by sorcery. The Spanish party began a full tactical withdrawal, carrying the unconscious Father Miguel and supporting the traumatized Juan, while Francisco provided rear guard action against the perceived threat of demon, sharks, and dancing priests. As they fled across the plaza, Cortez shouted back to Tlacaelel, "We will return. Your sorcery will not protect you forever." Tlacaelel, who understood none of this but recognized the dramatic tone, assumed this was some sort of traditional Spanish farewell ritual. He waved enthusiastically and called back, "May Kevin the Feathered Danger Noodle bless your journey. Remember to touch grass and stay hydrated. It's giving main character energy, period." The Spanish party reached their boats in record time, desperately pushing off from shore while Baby Shark continued echoing across the lake behind them. As they rowed frantically toward their ships, several men were praying. Others were arguing about what they had witnessed, and Cortez was already composing the report he would send back to Cuba. "Captain," Francisco gasped between strokes, "what do we tell the governor? How do we explain whatever that was?" "We tell him the truth," Cortez replied grimly. "This land is populated by sorcerers who worship entities called Kevin, possess demonic talking machines, and can summon cartoon demons at will. They speak in tongues, perform ritual dances, and appear to have access to supernatural knowledge." "But sir," Juan said weakly, "some of what they said almost made sense. Didn't they mention wanting peace and friendship?" "They mentioned wanting pizza," Francisco corrected, "and they kept talking about slaying things and setting them on fire. Plus they worship someone called Kevin who runs air conditioning. That's clearly demonic." Back on shore, Tlacaelel was having his own post-meeting analysis with Malinche and the other Aztec officials who had witnessed the encounter. The laptops had finally stopped playing Baby Shark, though the song was now stuck in everyone's heads for what would undoubtedly be the rest of their lives. "I believe," Tlacaelel announced proudly, "that was a tremendously successful diplomatic exchange. The visitors seemed very interested in our religious practices. They appreciated our cultural references, and they departed with great energy and enthusiasm." Malinche stared at him. "High Priest, with respect, I think there may have been some miscommunications." "Nonsense," Tlacaelel replied cheerfully. "The sacred translation devices worked perfectly. We established that they appreciate our main character energy. They're interested in our expansion packs, and they clearly approve of Kevin's role as CEO of air conditioning. Plus, they seem to enjoy the divine music at the end." "They fled in terror," pointed out Xochitl. "The temple scribe." "Dramatic farewells are common among foreign dignitaries," Tlacaelel explained patiently. "And did you hear their parting words? They promised to return." "Clearly, they want to continue our cultural exchange." Meanwhile, aboard the Spanish flagship, Cortez was composing what would become one of the most influential documents in the history of European colonization. His report would shape Spanish policy toward the Aztec Empire and ultimately contribute to the decision to launch a full military conquest. "To His Excellence Diego Velázquez, Governor of Cuba," he wrote by candlelight, "I write to inform you of discoveries that defy all natural law and Christian understanding. The natives of this land possess supernatural abilities and infernal devices that speak without human agency. They worship entities with names like Kevin and perform ritual dances to summon cartoon demons. Their leaders can make images appear in magical mirrors and speak words that enter the mind like possession." He paused, trying to find words adequate to describe the morning's events. "Furthermore, they appear to have knowledge of future inventions and speak of things that do not exist in any Christian land. They mentioned expansion packs, air conditioning, and Wikipedia, none of which have meaning in any human language. I fear we have discovered a land where the devil himself has established dominion." The report continued for several pages,